It's really interesting you talk about your time with the Reds, and I've heard you speak and interviewed so many times, and there are so many successes in your career. But one thing that I never ever hear a coach talk about is what it's like. And I don't know whether that's because when it comes to an end, your silence is bought, or it's part of the dismissal, as it were. But what it's like as a coach when it comes to an end. Can you give us a snapshot of, I suppose, the emotions, the sort of almost the mechanical process of what happened with you at the Reds, Saracens, etc. And I understand if you don't want to go into it, but we hear so much about the success. I'd love to know what it's like for you personally when it doesn't go right, or for a coach for that matter.
Yeah, I can speak about the Reds particularly. I was distracted, mate. I took the job because I wanted to prove people wrong, because I'd been sacked as the Australian coach, and they'd been third last for 3 years. I'd already decided I was going to go to Saracens. So that was, so I was just going there for a short period of time. And as I said, I couldn't get a real feel of the team. I had a couple of players that I went there because I wanted to coach, like Elton Flatley, and I think he only played one game, if not, he mightn't have even played a game for us. So it was all these difficult situations, and quite frankly, I wasn't a good enough coach to be able to cope with it. And that's the end. And then I had a really good relationship with the chairman, and I remember coming back to Brisbane after the end of the last game, and we had breakfast in I think it's called Breakfast Creek, breakfast at Breakfast Creek, and it had a nice mashed avocados on toast, nice flat white. Yeah, it was a really nice breakfast. Said, I think, mate, it's probably best we call it quits. And that was it. And I was literally on my way. And I still think about it a lot, because I'm disappointed I wasn't able to do better for that team. And the only thing I get a little bit of pleasure was that I played guys like Genya and Cooper, who then went on to win a Super 12 or Super 14 4 years later. And so sometimes you do some of the work to make a team win, and you don't deserve credit for you, but from the coaching point of view, they're the positive bits, because in any negative situations, there's positive bits, just as in positive situations, there's negative bits.
Do you, as a coach, over your mashed avocado, do you know at that point, and you're sort of at peace with it, or does your world fall apart as a coach? Because you are so the fulcrum of everything that team is about, that the pressure going through you, even when you're successful, is extraordinary. I just, did you do self-doubt and despair and that kind of thing? Or actually, do you feel it as the right decision at the time? No,
I felt it was the right decision at the time. And as I said, I was on my way to Saracens anyway. And I was really, it's funny how things turn around, because I did 6 months at Saracens the previous season. They'd won 4 or 16 games. I came in, we won 6. I think we won 4 or 6 games to stay up. And I'd already signed to go back there 2 years later, because I wanted to do that. I felt like it was a great project, Saracens. And that was a great story in itself. I went there. The CEO there was Mark Cinderbury, who was my CEO at the Brumbies, who I had a great relationship with. And after 6 weeks, again, circumstances changed. He was sacked as the CEO. They brought in a South African CEO. Half the club was sold to South Africans. And I basically then decided I wasn't going to stay. And that then embarked me to go back to Japan, which then evolved to be a really good period for me. So, everything has a twist and turn, and you just got to ride it, and you've got to keep acknowledging the fact that you can always get better as a coach. And when you've made a mistake, accept the mistake. And don't, because no one's perfect and no one knows what to do all the time, because coaching's bloody difficult, because you're dealing with 30 blokes who have all got different ideas of what's good in their head. And today, even more so, I think it's even more difficult.